Holy Trinity Church and Chesterfield Museum recently partnered together to deliver this wonderful George Stephenson Day, complete with a George reenactor. This was held on Saturday the 11th of June. Holy Trinity Church is George Stephenson's final resting place, and people were able to see the stunning stained glass window commissioned by his son Robert. There was fun for all the family with talks, children's activities, and the chance to handle objects such as a model of the famous Stephenson's rocket and a replica cucumber straightener. Refreshments were available, and there were outdoor stalls offering crafts, cakes, and a tombola. Councillor Kate Sarvant, Chesterfield Borough Council's cabinet member for town centres and visitor economy, said, "Whilst Chesterfield Museum is closed, it's fantastic that we can partner with organisations like Holy Trinity Church to ensure everyone can still learn about our heritage. We're planning more events like this over the next few years while Stevenson Memorial Hall undergoes a multi-million-pound refurbishment." The Reverend Jill Hancock of Holy Trinity Church says it's great to be working with Chesterfield Museum to help local people connect with our town's heritage. This is a wonderful opportunity to talk about George Stephenson and show both his final resting place and the incredible stained glass window that was commissioned in his honour. The event was opened by the Mayor and Mayoress of Chesterfield, Tony and Sharon Rogers.
Hello, the name's George Stephenson, and you join us in Holy Trinity Church in Chesterfield. And you're probably wondering, what is a northerner doing a place like this? Well, I'll tell you. This is where my home was at a place called Tapton House near Chesterfield for the last 10 years of my life. And actually, I was buried in this very church. Just over there behind me, all right, where the communion table is my actual grave. And then a few years after that, the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, of whom I was its first president, they decided they wanted something a bit more fancy in the ground. Obviously, there's a statue of me as well over by the train station. And the reason I came down south was basically for work, all right? But I'll tell you where it all began. I was born in 1781 in a place called Willem in Northumberland. And I was one of 7 kids altogether. Very, very crowded, all right? And I started off working like most people up there in the coal fields and in the pits. And I was going to get married, however. The farmer to whose daughter I wish to marry, he thought that I was in a dead-end job, going nowhere, with no prospects, no money, and as such he forbid us to marry. Anyway, she vowed she'd never marry another man. We'll come back to her a bit later on, because she's kind of important. Anyway, so I got married and started to work, and eventually I worked my way up, and I was what's known as a brakesman. So working on the colliery winding gear, so all the tubs and everything, putting the cage board up to the surface, my job to make sure it's safe. And from that, obviously, I'm getting a lot of experience with the engines. And I start to make improvements, repair a few things. And from that, I eventually get promoted until I'm a head engineer. And as a head engineer, all right, I've got responsible not just for the pit I was at Killingworth, but lots of other pits as well. And the house that we live in for a time, all right, the works is literally right outside the back door, so I can fall out of bed and fall straight into work. As I'm getting myself a bit of a reputation, all right, my money's going up and up as well. At one point, I was getting paid over £100 a year, which you've got to remember, this is back in the 1810s, 1820s. That's a lot of money compared to what I was on. When my first wife died, now I've made something of myself. The lady who said she'd never marry another man eventually marries me 20 years afterwards, and that she was my first love. All right, so we have a great time, and eventually my son Robert, he's born as well. Now Robert's obviously known for being an engineer, all right, and together by the 1820s we're working together. Now I made sure Robert went to school. I never went to school, all right. I was illiterate until the age of 18, and I taught myself how to read and write. Because I was illiterate and I didn't talk posh, lots of people didn't take me seriously. For instance, a safety lamp. All right. Now, lots of people say it's Humphrey Davy that invented the safety lamp. And that's right. Okay. He won the prize, £2,000 for it. But actually, I demonstrated a safety lamp a few months before in front of witnesses. All right. But because he's the one with the science in his mind and lives down south and's got all his fancy friends, he's the one that got recognition for it. Eventually, I got recognized for it, but it took a little time and a bit of a battle to do so. So I made sure Robert had a proper education, and as such, Robert spoke a bit posher than what I do. Right? So it's the 1820s. I've started building locomotives for the collieries in the northeast. All right, and then the Stockton and Darlington Railway is where I built one of my famous locomotives, a thing called Locomotion. Right, and that's in the mid 1820s, 1825. All right, and basically it's 2 beam engines going for a little ride. It's quite difficult to operate. It's not massively efficient, all right? And I have to say, it's not all of my genius, all right? For example, there's something on it called Murray's side valve, all right? It's a Trifithic boiler. It's not pure Stephenson genius, but what I'm good at is recognizing other people's talents and putting it all together into one thing and make it massively efficient. By 1829, I'd come up with great ideas and at the Rainhill trials to determine what sort of locomotive should run between Liverpool and Manchester. I come up with probably my most famous creation, the Rocket. The Rocket is massively efficient, very fast, 29 miles an hour. At the opening of the railway, though, unfortunately, I run over a local MP called Mr. Hutchinson. Mr. Hutchinson, he wanted a better view of the train, so unfortunately for him, stepped out in front of it and then got hit by it. So 29 miles an hour it was, land speed record of its day. We take Mr. Hutchinson, we put him on the wagon and try and get him to the nearest hospital as quickly as possible. Sadly, he died, but he did get there before he did. All right, so another efficient way of the use of railways. Had some work in Scotland and then moved down to Leicestershire, where I built the Leicester-Swannington Railway. Very, very famous railway, that one of the earliest in the world. In fact, the tunnel at Glenfield was for a time one of the longest railway tunnels in the world as well. Very, very narrow. In fact, by the time in British Railways, they had to have specially designed locomotives and coaching stock to actually make it way through the tunnel. I digress. Anyway, so part of that is an inclined plane. You winch the wagons up and you use gravity to go down the other side. All right. Now, I built a railway like that at a place called Bowes as well, which is in Northumberland. And those wagons were able to freewheel for 20 mile, all right, and pull up the empty wagons. An incredibly efficient way of doing it. It was so efficient in Bowes, in fact, that British Coal, or the National Coal Board as it was back in the 70s, they were able to use that as it was until 1974. All right. So, Leicester Swannington Railway. The estate of Snibston comes up for sale in northwest Leicestershire, and I'm told there's loads of coal under it. They've been digging coal in that part of Leicestershire since the Tudor period. So I decided to buy the estate, find coal, sink a pit. Pit headgear's still there. You can still see it today. It's a listed monument, all right? And eventually this huge town springs up that I built for all the workers, and that becomes known as Coalville, Coal Town, basically. It was so prosperous that it was still being mined until 1986, all right? So by that time, I'm undergoing various engineering projects, all right? And it's at that point I moved to Tapton House, all right? In what year are we looking at now? 1838. Now, Tapton House near Chesterfield. I'm still undergoing engineering projects, but now I can sit back and relax, put my feet up. I've earned me money. I've done me grafting, all right? And as such, I live the relatively last 10 years of my life in comfort. I'm leasing the building. I don't have to own it. I'm making loads of money from all my coal mines that are coming in, and it's a good life. So if you want to find out a little bit more about George Stephenson, there's lots of places you can do it. One place, of course, Chesterfield Museum, here inside Holy Trinity Church, and of course at the National Railway Museum. After all, I'm the father of the railways. So if you want to find out more, get a look at those places and find out about one of England's greatest engineers.